Okay, so what type of information did I receive prior to going into the assignment, and what were my thoughts? Well, as part of my best practice approach, I like to pre-conference with the people involved to find out who, what, and why. So as far as the information is concerned that I gathered who were the people I was going to be interpreting for. So in this case, it was a social worker, a deaf social worker, and a deaf client from Cuba, and then a sister who spoke Spanish. And so from there, I also tried to determine what was the mode of communication. And so there was going to be Spanish, mostly. The social worker was going to use ASL, but I understand that Angel, the deaf brother, is still learning ASL, so he's highly visual. So would be using some form of visual gestural communication system. So that's important for me to know, so that I could prepare myself and also predict what kind of challenges I would face in trying to ensure effective communication happens. So why are we here? So it was my understanding that the appointment had to do with verifying information on a food stamp application. So understanding the goals helps me mediate the language and be sensitive to what the goals of each player is, so that I can ensure that that is communicated and they can both get their goals met. My thoughts and my concerns before the assignment, when I first was asked to do this assignment and was told that trilingual interpreting was needed, I wondered, is it going to be primarily going from Spanish into ASL, or primarily from English into ASL, then Spanish? What was going to be heavy on? Was it going to be mostly ASL or Spanish or English? Because ASL is my first language. And as far as English and Spanish, even though they did come at the same time, I mastered English more so than I have Spanish. So so my thoughts were, if it's heavy Spanish voicing, then I have to prepare myself to certain demands that would come up, such as language intrusion from the primary language and the secondary language, and what type of controls I would have to apply to cope with those demands. So, getting my head in the zone, so to speak, you really got to come into it prepared and expecting the unexpected and the expected as well. Mm-hmm. And after gathering all of the information, and understanding what the topic was, what the goals were, it also allowed me to do a little research of what terminology would be used and whatnot. And also, after finding out that the social worker it was deaf and would be using ASL, but that there would be visual gestural communication involved, immediately I felt that there might be a need for a certified deaf interpreter, because when the conversation between the social worker and the deaf person is in progress, there might be some visual gestural nuances that I am not able to pick up. So this is a maximize your language skills situation, where you have got to maximize everything you have. And if you just don't have what it takes, then you have to seek out other resources, such as a certified deaf interpreter. So right now I'm coming in feeling that that might be the situation for me. And so we'll have to wait and see. And at pre-conference, because the appointment didn't happen right away, I took advantage of the time to get acquainted with the deaf person and the sister. And in the course of that conversation, I found out that in Cuba, they don't say estampillas de alimentos for food stamps or food stamps assistance, deseos de comidas. So it was helpful for me because then I want to use the terminology that she's familiar with, to be culturally sensitive to her, because I am familiar with Mexican culture. I am Tex-Mex, and it's very different from Cuban culture. So I wanted to take that opportunity to become comfortable with her and establish a trust, because trust is a huge thing for high context cultures such as Spanish people in Spanish-speaking countries and deaf people as well. Mm-hmm. One other thing that I did to take advantage of that pre-conference time before the assignment began was to also talk to the social worker, the deaf social worker, knowing what challenges I would face because the more information I got, it was clear that it was going to be heavy Spanish voicing. So immediately I knew that I was going to have some demands, that I needed to have some controls in place as the assignment began and was in progress. So one of the controls, so that when I came to a place where I was overwhelmed by the information and my brain was not catching up and not accessing the Spanish words or phrases, was to talk to the social worker about establishing a signal between us to let her know when I needed the pace to slow down, for us to kind of pause for a second, for me to catch up and make sure that information was rendered accurately and effectively.